This is part 2 of 2 lectures on the Book of Proverbs. By me, my name is Dr. Joe Sprinkle. In this lecture, we will deal with the simple, the ideal person, the ideal wife, husband, and the hermeneutics of Proverbs. First of all, a study on the simple or the naive in Proverbs. The Hebrew word is pati, and he's an example of a fool in Proverbs. There are several different terms for fool, but this is one of them. The book of Proverbs is addressed to this fool. One of the purposes of the book, according to chapter 1 and verse 4, is for giving prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. Now, this word simple is in parallelism in the poetry with the word for young. And that suggests that the simple is a young person. The basic meaning of the root patah, from which pati is derived, the word translated the simple, patah means to be wide or open or spacious. It doesn't mean that the person is mentally slow. The pati is not a simpleton, but rather he's open-minded to good ideas and open-minded to bad ideas. The purpose for opening the mind is to take something good in and to keep the bad stuff out, but he doesn't do that. He's open to enticement. The pati, as it turns out, is a mugwump. What is a mugwump? Well, a mugwump is a person who sits on the fence with his mug on one side and his wump on the other. In other words, he can't decide which side of the fence he wants to come down on. Is he going to come down on the path of wisdom, or is he going to go on the path of folly? Now, the pati is typically immature and young. He lacks discernment, and therefore he's easily deceived. The pati believes everything, but the prudent man considers his steps, Proverbs 14:15. But he or she is not neutral or a tabula rasa, a blank slate, but tends to go astray. That is, he or she tends to be wayward. For the waywardness of the pati shall kill them, Proverbs 1 and verse 32. Well, maybe you've seen this person, the pati. If you go to church, you might find him or her on the back row of the church, maybe sleeping through the sermon. Symbolically, he has 1 foot in the church and 1 foot in the world. And people wonder, which path is he going to choose? The path of wisdom or the path of folly? The way of Christ or the way of the world? Now, a pati was going to have to decide, because a pati does not remain a pati forever. He must either accept instruction and become wise, or become a full-fledged fool. But the pati is in danger of disaster. The book of Proverbs' message to the pati is urgent, for he must become wise before life's troubles overtake him. Lady Wisdom urgently calls out to the pati. Wisdom calls aloud in the street. She raises her voice in the public squares. How long will you simple ones love your simple ways? If you had responded to my rebuke, I would have poured out my heart to you and made my thoughts known to you. But since you rejected me, again, this is Lady Wisdom talking, when I called, since you ignored all my advice, I in turn will laugh at your disaster. I will mock when calamity overtakes you like a storm, when disaster sweeps over you like a whirlwind, when disaster and troubles overwhelm you. Lady Wisdom mocks those who ignore her. So how does the petit become wise? He must accept God's reproof, and then the spirit of Lady Wisdom will come upon him. He must accept God's instruction. As the Wisdom Psalm 19 puts it, the testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. How can the simple become wise? Listen to the testimony of the Lord. Scripture, we might say. So that's a brief study on the one fool, the petit. A new study. And this one's just a broad study just to get us into a lot of verses in Proverbs. And the subject study here is the ideal wise person according to Proverbs. The ideal wise person is a hard worker as opposed to the lazy sluggard. Proverbs 10 and verse 4, poor is he who works with a negligent hand, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. Or Proverbs 6 and verse 6, go to the ant, O sluggard, observe her ways and be wise, which having no chief, officer, or ruler, prepares her food in the summer and gathers her provision in the harvest. How long will you lie down, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep? A little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and your poverty will come upon you like a vagabond, and your need like an armed man. So look at the ants. They work all the time, and they prepare. So don't be a lazy sluggard. That's the advice of Proverbs. 2, a wise person is slow to anger. We might use the word long-suffering. Proverbs 15 and verse 1, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up strife. Likewise, Proverbs 15 and verse 18, a hot-tempered man stirs up strife, but the slow to anger pacifies contention. Don't be a person that stirs up strife. When someone says something provocative to you, give a gentle answer that turns away wrath. Be slow to anger. That pacifies contention as well. 3, the wise person is discreet with words, as opposed to fools who say whatever comes into their heads. Proverbs 13 and verse 3, the one who guards his mouth preserves his life. The one who opens wide his lips comes to ruins. And Proverbs 11 and verse 13, he who goes about as a talebearer reveals secrets, but he who is trustworthy conceals a matter. You should be careful in what you say. If you open wide your lips, you come to ruins. And if you're given some information that's confidential, he who is trustworthy conceals a matter. But if you're foolish, you're going to reveal the secrets. A 4th category is that a wise person avoids excesses. And there's various areas where a wise person avoids excesses. First of all, he avoids excesses of food. Proverbs 25 and verse 16, have you found honey? Eat only what you need, lest you have it in excess and vomit it. Don't pig out just because you found a lot of honey. Eat it in moderation. There should also be moderation in terms of possessions. Proverbs 30, verses 7 through 9, speaks of the dangers of having too much or the dangers of having too little in terms of material possession. With the former, you might forget God. With the latter, you might end up stealing. This is what it says. 2 things I ask of you, O Lord, do not refuse me before I die. Keep falsehood and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. Otherwise I may have too much and disown you and say, who is the Lord? Or I may become poor and steal and so dishonor the name of my God. There's dangers on both ends. If you have too much, well, then you may forget God. If you have too little, you'll be tempted to steal. You should also avoid excesses in terms of alcoholic drink. Proverbs chapter 23 has a section that speaks of the evils of alcoholism. Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has strife? Who has complaints? Who has needless bruises? Who has bloodshot eyes? Those who linger over wine, who go to sample bowls of mixed wine. Do not gaze at the wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup, when it goes down smoothly. In the end, it bites like a snake and poisons like a viper. Your eyes will see strange things, and your mind imagine confusing things. You will be like one sleeping in the high seas, lying on the top of a rigging. You do stupid things when you're drunk. You may see things that aren't there. You may try to sleep on the ocean and end up drowning if you fall in. You may try to lie on top of a rigging of a ship, and again, you'll fall off and hurt yourself. They hit me, you'll say, but I was not hurt. I was too drunk to feel it. I've already passed out. They beat me, but I don't feel it. When will I wake up so I can find another drink? The sad life of an alcoholic. Now, a little word about the Bible and alcohol here. We have this very strong negative statement in Proverbs 23, which lays out the evils of alcoholism. At the end of Proverbs, in 31, 4 through 7, it is not for kings to drink wine and strong drink, it says, because they won't be able to do their job in deciding cases that come before them as judge. And the New Testament also condemns drunkenness. Ephesians 5, verse 18, do not be drunk with wine, but be filled with the Spirit. On the other hand, there are some positive statements that are made about alcohol. Lady Wisdom, as it turns out, served wine at her table. Though I might comment that it's mixed wine. That's wine that's been diluted a bit with water. Wine, in some parts of Scripture, is a symbol of joy. In Psalm 104 and verse 15, and also Ecclesiastes 10 and verse 19. And so it's not being condemned there, but it's something to be enjoyed. And then, of course, Jesus both drank wine and turned water into wine. In Matthew 11:19, unlike John the Baptist, who did not drink alcoholic beverage, Jesus both ate and drank and was called a glutton and a drunkard. In John chapter 2 is when, at the wedding of Cana, he's turned the water into wine. And so if Jesus can use wine and even celebrate a wedding by providing wine, it must be possible to use it in an appropriate and responsible way that avoids the negative aspects. On the other hand, the negative aspects are very serious. Therefore, one must be careful with alcoholic drink. Number 5, a wise person is serene, happy, joyful, as opposed to being gloomy or moody all the time. Proverbs 15:15, all the days of the afflicted are bad, but a cheerful heart has a continual feast. You should strive to be a cheerful person. Life goes better if you are cheerful. On the other hand, Proverbs 17, verse 22, a joyful heart is good medicine, but a broken spirit dries up the bones. Perhaps you know the children's stories with Eeyore in it, where he was a gloomy donkey that made everybody else's life gloomy. When you were around him, he was so gloomy. But a joyful heart is good medicine. The broken spirit will dry up not only your bones, but the bones of the people around you. 6. The wise person is generous to the needy. Proverbs 22 and verse 9. He who is generous will be blessed. Proverbs 28:27. He who gives to the poor will never want, but he who shuts his eyes will have many curses. Those curses may be from the poor he walks by. Proverbs 31 and verse 20. The ideal woman extends her hand to the poor, and she stretches out her hands to the needy. The wise person is generous. Well, those are at least a few characteristics of the ideal person. We'll come back to some more in a moment. Let me move on to characteristics of a godly wife, another subject study. The Book of Proverbs sees marriage as a good thing. It assumes that most young men will marry and that marriage is good. He who finds a wife finds a good thing, Proverbs 18, verse 22. And Proverbs 31:10, an excellent wife who can find, for her worth is far above jewels. So it's good, in most cases, for people to marry. On the other hand, an ill-chosen wife can make life miserable. It is better to live on a desert island than with a contentious and vexing woman, Proverbs 21 and verse 9. A constant dripping on the day of steady rain and a contentious woman are alike, 27 verse 15. Now, what is the ideal wife in Proverbs like? Well, the ideal wife fears the Lord. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. The ideal wife places character above beauty. As a ring of gold in a swine's snout, so is a beautiful woman who lacks discretion. Someone who's beautiful but lacks discretion is like putting a gold ring on a pig's nose. The ideal wife does not shame her husband. An excellent wife is the crown of her husband, but she who shames him is a rottenness in his bones. An ideal wife is competent and independent. And you see examples of this in Proverbs 31. Examples of confidence and independence there is that she provides clothes and food for her family. She purchases real estate, engages in agriculture, 31:16. She does acts of charity for the poor. She's not lazy. She's willing to stay up late and get up early and face hostile weather for her family. She's even involved in manufacturing and retail, where she can earn some income for the family. And she's a teacher as well, a teacher of wisdom. Let's move on to the ideal husband. Proverbs doesn't address this topic as directly as it does the ideal wife, but virtues of an ideal person make for a good husband. So let's go to some of the characteristics that Proverbs asks of all people that would make you a better husband. For example, the ideal husband does not fool around with other women. Drink water from your own cistern and fresh water from your own well. And cistern and well are both metaphors for the wife. Should your springs be dispersed abroad, streams of water in the street, let them be yours alone and not for strange men on the street. In other words, don't enjoy loose women who share their sexual pleasures with other men. Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice in the wife of your youth. As a loving hind and a graceful doe, let her breast satisfy you at all times. Be exhilarated always with her love. Why should you, my son, be exhilarated with an adulteress and embrace the bosom of a foreign woman? Proverbs 5:15 through 20. The ideal husband is quick to praise his wife. In the ideal woman passage, her husband also, and he praises her, saying, "Many daughters have done nobly, but you excel them all." It's important for husbands to praise their wives. The ideal husband trusts his wife with significant responsibilities. The heart of her husband trusts in her, it says, and then it goes on to say that she considers a field and buys it. Proverbs 31:11 and Proverbs 31:16. Apparently she has some responsibilities where she can go out and buy a field while her husband is involved in other activities. The ideal husband is also going to be an honest person. Proverbs 29, verse 24, "A partner with a thief hates his own life." An ideal husband also has the other characteristics of an ideal person. He'll be truthful. Proverbs 12:17 and 19, "Whoever speaks the truth gives honest evidence, but a false witness speaks deceitfully. Truthful lips endure forever." And honesty in marriage is a very important characteristic. Also, a good husband is going to be willing to be corrected, and one might add, even by his wife. Proverbs 12:15, "The way of the fool seems right to him, but a wise man listens to advice." To which we might add, even if the advice comes from his wife. Proverbs 15 and verse 12, "A mocker resents correction, he will not consult the wise." And Proverbs 15:31, "He who listens to a life-giving rebuke will be at home among the wise." Now, the person most likely to correct a man is going to be his wife. She knows him better than anyone. And it's important to hear out whatever complaints and criticisms a wife might have. Another ideal characteristic of a husband is to be forgiving. Proverbs 19 and verse 11, "A man's wisdom gives him patience. It is to his glory to overlook an offense." And within marriage, there's always going to be offenses. It's hard for two sinful people to live together as husband and wife. In order to make it work, you need to overlook offenses. You need to be forgiving. Otherwise, it'll destroy the marriage. Another thing is the ideal husband is going to be willing to admit when he's wrong. "He who conceals his sins does not prosper, but whoever confesses and renounces them finds mercy." And again, we're going to be wrong from time to time, and we should admit that to our spouse. And also, an ideal husband is not a jealous man. Proverbs 27:4, "Anger is cruel and fury overwhelming, but who can stand before jealousy?" So anyway, those are some characteristics of an ideal husband. Let me make some concluding remarks on the hermeneutics of Proverbs. Proverbs gives us general truths rather than absolute truths. It says, "A soft answer turns away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger," Proverbs 15:1. Well, that's usually the case. It's typically the case. Usually a soft answer averts wrath. And with the lazy sluggard, if you work hard, usually you will prosper. Whereas if you're a lazy person, you'll come to ruin. On the other hand, there are exceptions. The lazy sluggard might win the lottery. And you may answer with a soft answer, But the other guy is so bent out of shape that he's going to knock your block off no matter what you have to say. And so these are not absolute promises. They are not without exception, but they give general truths, what usually is the case, what generally is the case, but not necessarily always. Now, this comes into play with a verse that's often quoted in Proverbs, Proverbs 22 and verse 6. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is older, he will not depart from it. You have to understand, like most of the Proverbs, this is a general truth. Generally, if you train up a child well, he'll turn out well. But there are exceptions to that rule. It's not an absolute guarantee. And so you need to bear this in mind hermeneutically when you come to the Proverbs, that they give general truths rather than absolute promises. Well, this is my analysis of the Book of Proverbs, practical wisdom for young people, and my name is Dr. Joe Sprinkle.